Hello, comrades. I thought I would do a new series where I just read out some texts, both to help myself be more motivated to read and to put it online so that other people, if they want an audio version of a text, can actually listen to it. So, the first text I would start with is actually an interview between Thomas Sankara and Radio Havana, Cuba. Um, and it's a pretty short work. It's titled Apartheid is a Cancer That Must Be Exterminated. Um, this article was originally published on Liberation School on August 17th, 2022. Audio of this interview and its transcription in French are available at thomassankara.net. It was first published in La Revolución de Burkina Faso se está consolidando, Granma 19.07.1986, translated by Maxime Delafosse Brown, Gabriel Rakil, and Hope Wilson from Liberation School. HTML markup by Zdravko Savesky in 2023. And it's available on Marxist Internet Archive, which is where I'm reading it from. And it's formatted as a series of questions between Radio Havana, Cuba, which is abbreviated as RHC, and Thomas Sankara. RHC. Comrade President, what is the position of Burkina Faso concerning the struggle against apartheid? Thomas Sankara. Apartheid today is a form of modern Nazism. Apartheid is a living element of imperialism of our times. Ultimately, apartheid is a strategy in class struggle for the exploitation of man by man. Consequently, tactically, and strategically, we have to combat apartheid, not because we are black, but simply because we are humans and not animals. And we have chosen, in the context of class struggle, the class of the future, the working class, which makes people free, prosperous, and happy. RHC. What is being done concretely in Burkina Faso to struggle against apartheid? Thomas Sankara. Burkina Faso organizes the struggle against apartheid at different levels. There are some social organizations, like the Burkinabe movement against racism and apartheid. But above all, there is the political and ideological training of all Burkinabe within the framework of the Committee for the Defense of the Revolution. We indicate to them all possible enemies of humanity and of our people, one of which is apartheid. We take legislative, administrative, judicial, and political measures against apartheid. We boycott international activities in which people responsible for carrying out apartheid, the partisans and actors of apartheid, impose their presence. We combat it in sports, in cultural activities, in international meetings. We fight it economically, even though Burkina Faso is a small, economically weak country. We combat apartheid and reject the products of apartheid. Our fight also continues by way of proletarian internationalism, in the desire for unity of action and reflection with other people in order to put an end to apartheid and exterminate this cancer that compromises not only Africa, but equally all of humanity. This is why we denounce with all of our strength the governments and regimes that in their hypocrisy say they oppose apartheid, but in reality are its true agents, the primary purveyors of apartheid in South Africa. Everyone deserves the same fate as the likes of Peter Botha, and even more ultimately because Peter Botha is only the arm while they are the brains. RHC. What is the significance of the next Organization of African Unity, OAU, Summit for Burkina Faso? Thomas Sankara. The next OAU Summit should constitute an extremely important stage in the development of our consciousness, but above all, in the effective mobilization of multifaceted forces against apartheid and equally against all the other ills that harass Africa, particularly indebtedness. We must denounce the indebtedness as the second pillage, a secondary round of theft of African resources. We are colonized, exploited. Our resources were plundered today. They still want us to repay debts that we never contracted for our happiness, but these debts were imposed on us by the same people who, in the overflowing of their capitalism, considered it essential to create new markets, to invade them, and to dominate them with financial power. RHC. Comrade President, Burkina Faso will soon celebrate the third anniversary of its revolution. What is the current situation in Burkina Faso? Thomas Sankara. Burkina Faso finds itself on the shining path of revolutionary victories, the construction of a new society for the benefit of a people that suffered for too long. But luckily, since the 4th of August, 1983, with the arrival of the democratic and grassroots revolution, lives the possibility of beholding a new future. Our 3-year-old revolution is in the process of consolidating itself. Many social successes constitute an endless list of victories in the domain of health. We have obtained many victories in the domain of education. Thousands of schools have been built. In the domain of health, there have been thousands of health clinics built. More specifically, one health clinic per village. This was one of our directives. A vaccination campaign has been extended to all countries, and, in particular, children from our brother and neighboring countries that have been vaccinated all along our border, without taking into account the political regime, without considering the discord that exists between one or other of our neighbors and ourselves. We did this in the name of love for the people, but we are in the process of obtaining other economic victories. In the 5-year plan that will begin August 4th of the next year, at the same time that the celebrations of our 3rd anniversary will be a challenge that our people will have to meet and will surely overcome in order to construct an even happier society, so that we can achieve a bright future. But above all, politically, our revolution is in the process of taking gigantic steps by developing our tactics and strategy. Armed with the ideology taught to us by the great educators of the proletariat, we are currently building a political organization. As Lenin said, without revolutionary organization, without revolutionary ideology, we will not achieve revolution. It's for all these reasons that our people are more and more certain that the difficult struggle that awaits them will result in victory, because the revolutionary forces organize themselves more and more on a sound basis, a clear ideological formation, and a dynamic unity of action to obtain more for the benefit of all our people, for the benefit of all other peoples. Since here we say that he who loves his people loves other peoples, I would like to take this opportunity to commend the Cuban people, the Cuban Revolution, and especially the great comrade, Fidel Castro, for the clear-sightedness and internationalist sense of Cuba's commitment. This is why in Cuba, as well as here, we say, homeland or death, we shall overcome. RHC. Comrade President, to finish, would you like to send a personal message to Nelson Mandela? Thomas Sankara. I will say to Nelson Mandela that no suffering is desirable for a human being, except for masochists. But when we suffer, when we bear pain and martyrdom for other men, for entire peoples, we can only be happy since we succeeded in the miracle of transforming pain, suffering, and martyrdom into sublime happiness, and to radiant victory for the benefit of other men. We animate humanity with an invigorating lifeblood, one that awakens the most daring and pushes forward those who are already infected. In this sense, Nelson Mandela in prison is 1,000 times freer and 1,000 times happier than those outside who consume under the exploitation of man by man, or worse, who already serve the objective interests of the enemies of the people, especially the arrogant imperialism of our times. And that's the end of the text. There is a note by Marxist Internet Archive saying, Peter Willem Botha, an outspoken opponent of racial equality and communism, served as the last Prime Minister of South Africa from 1978 to 1984, and the first executive state president of South Africa from 1984 to 1989. In 1985, the year before this interview with Sankara, he delivered the Rubicon speech in which he refused to give in to the demands of the insurgent black population, including the release of Nelson Mandela from prison. Due to ongoing mobilizations, he declared a nationwide state of emergency the following year and infamously stated, "This uprising will bring out the beast in us." And I'm going to do a little bit of commentary on the text now. So, one thing I noticed in this text was Sankara ties apartheid into class struggle, which I think is the correct move, and I think it's it just shows how dedicated he was and how he understood theory. And I think it's something we all should remember, that is important for revolutionaries to remember, that struggle, all forms of struggle, eventually tie back to class, including apartheid. And another thing I found interesting was how he talked about vaccinating people from other countries, which shows how Sankara put class struggle above national struggle, and he had a sort of internationalism to the socialist project in Burkina Faso, which also obviously is very important to understand class struggle over national struggle. For instance, wars between nations I believe Lenin spoke of this around World War I, where in the Bolsheviks they said that nations should, or the people of the nation should turn World War I from a national world war into a class war between all these nations fighting. Unfortunately, that didn't really come to pass, but at least the Bolsheviks managed to use it to their advantage and wage class war and actually succeed in Russia. Um, and another thing I guess one of the reasons I decided to choose this text was partially because I think apartheid is still an important issue today. For instance, we see in um, Israel, especially, one of the major modern day places of apartheid. Um, so it's important to have a bit of an understanding of apartheid, considering that it's still a major problem in our modern day. And I also like how Sankara talks about how Africa, even after independence um, and quote unquote decolonization, is still basically subjugated with debts and colonized in that way. It's sort of, I think neocolonialism is the term, but yeah, I think it's a really good point to remember. Um, anyway, that's all the commentary I've got for now. Thank you for watching. I will be posting more audiobooks soon, so yeah, stay tuned for that. Goodbye, comrades.